this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a marvelous day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. Well, today's discussion is a little reflective, but I wanted to speak on it just a little bit, and that's when I think about slavery, when I talk about slavery. I know that a lot of Black Americans are still depressed. We carry that trauma of slavery because we still live it. Even though we don't remember it as the actual experience, other people don't either, but they act like they do. So there's still a certain way that Americans, and I'm talking about white Americans, want to treat Black people or treat Black people. And so it's understandable that Black people would like to get past that. But to me, you don't get past your past. When I think of slavery, it does not depress me. It's not something that I think I need to get over or that I need to put in the past. Slavery, if looked at it like that, could be the greatest asset that Black Americans have. Because that is what gives us agency. And when I say agency, I mean a seat at the table. That's what gives us our place. Now, what we do a lot as Black Americans is that we play victim. And we are victims. We are the descendants of the victims of one of the worst affronts to humanity the world has known. And many say it is the worst affront to humanity that the world has known. We are the descendants of those people. So in that sense, we are victims. But that affront to humanity is what gives us our seat at the table. And our job now is to figure out how to best negotiate the power that that seat at the table gives us. See, we let other people come and usurp us because all these other people that are coming over here, well, let me back up. This country started out with three groups of people. The indigenous people who were already here, the enslaved people who were brought here from Africa, and the white people. Now, I'm not dismissing Black people who say they were already here, but all of us weren't already here. And if you were already here, I'm not really sure that that gets acknowledged anywhere but in the minds of those people. What gives us agency and what gives us a seat at the table in the United States is what our ancestors did during slavery and the endurance of our ancestors. They didn't run. They didn't have anywhere to run to. So they stayed here and made something out of their lives. So that is what gives us our place here. That's what gives us our seat at the table. The only problem with us is that we have not learned how to negotiate that power, that seat at the table. And white people, which we call the dominant society, have their own seat at the table, but they're constantly trying to undermine our power. That gives them more power because they're not going to give up their power. The saying goes, power concedes nothing without a fight. So their fight might not be physical in the sense of, I'm going to come and slug it out with you. Their fight might be strategy, strategizing as a way of diminishing our power or just getting it. But we fail to negotiate for ourselves. But guess who knows we have a seat at the table? These immigrants. These Indians who seem to be on a tear to replace white supremacists know that they don't have a seat at the table. So what they are doing coming out the gate is trying to undermine Black people, trying to undermine slavery, trying to make it seem like slavery was not important. And why does he think that? Because he wasn't here. He wasn't a part of the building of this country, for good or for bad. Black people were here. We were here before America was America. That's the fight we have to take to those people. But we're so busy trying to assimilate with them that they don't even want you, that we can't see the forest for the trees. We're the ones with the agency. And white Americans, because what white Americans have done primarily is usurp the indigenous people. But people who are calling themselves indigenous are people like Elaine Warren. She really thought that she was Indian descended. Turned out she didn't have any more Native American ancestry than a Black South African who had never been to the United States. But that's who's running around calling themselves Indians or Native Americans. But that's how power fights. The indigenous people of the United States of America were fought from every possible angle: religion, disease, warfare, phony treaties that the government didn't live up to. And let us not forget the Trail of Tears, where they just removed the indigenous people from states all over the country and put them on reservations, and then undermining their identity and trying to erase them. They had a battle just like the one we had. They were just different battles. And for anybody who doesn't know what the $5 Indian stands for, back during the land grab, when Europeans were coming over here taking land from the Indians, they set up the Office of Indian Affairs, so to speak. And if you were a white person, you could go there and pay $5. You could be grafted into an Indian tribe. So you could be 100% Irish, but you could go to the Indian Affairs Bureau, pay $5. Now all of a sudden you're a Cherokee. So that's what happened with the land with indigenous people. That's one of the things that happened with the land grab during those days, those pioneering days, as they call them, and they think of so fondly, which was really nothing but a land grab, taking land away from indigenous people and giving it to Europeans. The indigenous people are small, but they're starting to find their voices. Those are the ones who have agency, and then black Americans whose ancestors came through the slave system, and then the white people who were here engineering the whole thing. We're the ones with agency, and that really is the bottom line. But if you let somebody come in and outthink you and out-strategize you and tell you that, no, your contribution was not important. And what do they want to be important? They want the fact that they came here, and let's remember, they came here after the Immigration Act of 1965 was passed, because they weren't letting any non-white people into the United States in any numbers before then. But they want the fact that they came here and got a job and worked and went to school and got degrees. They want that to be important. Coming to the United States, getting paid for your labor, going to school, going to college, that is not what built America. America was built on the backs of the enslaved people that were our ancestors. And that is our seed. I have to keep saying it, because this is going to only get worse. Because white people see now that they can pick off some of these immigrants to fight black people. So all they're doing is getting folk to say what they want to say without them saying it. Because they know that as Jason Black, and I know a lot of y'all don't like Jason Black, but he does understand a lot about how white supremacy works. And he does make some profound statements at times. And he talks about the tools of white supremacy. And these are people that they use to do what they want done. And he says that when they get through using up their tools, they break them. In other words, you either go away like Bobby Jindal, the Indian that was the governor of Louisiana that nobody remembers, and you either gonna go away or they're gonna run you away. Now I'll say this, the Indians don't understand white supremacy as well as the Chinese and other Asians, because they've been coming here longer and they understand it better. They don't really have a seat at the table either, as far as I'm concerned. But they understand that white people will use you and then they'll discard of you. Now the Asians, and I'm talking about the Chinese, the Japanese, those Asians that they used to call Orientals, they are seeing in real time how when you learn how to play the game, they change the rules. Now for years and years and years, they were making test scores, getting into these Ivy League schools and these Big Ten schools and these large state universities about what you made on a test. They were making it about test scores. Well, that was to keep black people out. But that was before the Immigration Act of 1965. That was to keep black people out, and it did keep us out. Because we really didn't have the foundation. They made sure we didn't have the foundation that we needed to compete, at least with those test scores. So they made it about test scores. Well, the Asians were sitting back listening to that language and listening to that big deal about test scores, and they went to work. And after about 50, 60, 70 years, the Asians are winning the test score game. So what have they done? They've gone back and changed the whole thing around. So it's not about test scores anymore. These colleges gradually are doing away with the whole test scores for admission because the white kids can't beat the Asians at passing the test. So the Asians have been angry about it. They're still angry about that because they realize what we have been trying to tell them. Once you learn how to play the game, they change the rules. And they don't do that for anybody. The Indians just started coming here. They don't know the game yet. And they think they are going to jump on the square of white people and assimilate. And they think they can do that by attacking black people. But they do not understand the relationship between black people and white people. It's raggedy, it's crazy, but there is a relationship. But immigrants to the United States don't readily realize that. They think that we just hate each other all the time. And what they try to do is jump on the side of white people and become anti-black. And that's supposed to give them entrance into white society. And I'm going to use social media as an example. Especially on TikTok, you will have white women, and these are white American women, mostly white women, coming on that platform, appealing to black women or trying to have a conversation with black women. And they will be honest. I'm not talking about these silly white women who are with these silly black men making these silly videos. I'm talking about serious white women. And they'll say, this is for black women. And they're trying to have an honest conversation. Guess who will come on the platform and try to jump on the side of black women and tell black women that white women are gaslighting them? Immigrants. They'll be the first ones to come on the platform and try to turn black women against what the white women are trying to do, even if the white women are serious in trying to reach out. But the immigrants are threatened by that because if black women and white women can form friendships and become allies, that leaves the immigrants out in the cold. Because guess what? They don't have a seat at the table. They're trying to crowd in on white people's seat at the table. So a lot of black women have to come back and tell them, you stay out of this. It has nothing to do with you. Because the reality is if black folk, white folk, and black folk going to be fighting because that's what we do. But that's between black people and white people. And that's not between black people, white people, and immigrants. Because we are the ones who built this country. And we have to understand that. White folk understand that. But we have to understand that the only way that we have this seat at the table that we misuse is because of slavery. And that slavery means that we were here before this country was built. And we'll probably be, or some of us are probably going to stay here. And I'll also say this. These conservative white Americans are threatened by black people's seat at the table. And I'll tell you why. When they run around talking about CRT, and woke, white people are deflecting from another issue. And that's the 1619 Project. Now, that's what they're really upset about. They're using CRT and calling everything CRT and anti-woke and all that. They're calling it that. But CRT is just a buzzword that they use to talk about anything to do with race, especially black people, that they don't like. CRT stands for critical race theory. The concept of CRT is that white Americans' interests were advanced at the expense of non-white people, including indigenous people and black people, mostly indigenous people and black people. And I'm talking about descendants of slavery. The CRT is backed up by legislation that was passed, like the Jim Crow laws and the Black Codes and Plessy versus Ferguson, all of those legislation, all of those cases that came before the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court ruled on, that was in favor of white people against black people. But nobody is teaching CRT in elementary, middle, or high school. Those laws, that legislation is taught in law school to law school students. So they're not concerned about CRT. What they're concerned about is the 1619 Project. Nicole Hannah-Jones, who was a journalist with the New York Times, wrote this long piece of journalism in which she centered the founding of America in 1619 and not 1776. She contends that the founding of America began when the first enslaved people were brought here. Now, that's when they say the first enslaved people were brought here in 1619. But other historical documents state that the slaves were brought here long before then. But that's when they acknowledge it. That's when they institutionalized slavery. But Africans were coming over here enslaved before then. But it's the 1619 project that has white people upset, because it centers the founding of America with black people, the enslaved people and their descendants, and not white people. And that is what has them upset. Again, there's only 3 groups of people in the United States of America that have a real seat at the table: American descendants of slavery, white people, and the indigenous people. But what we're not doing is using our seat at the table in a way that benefits us. So they'll bow off a few black people and the rest of us will just be quiet. But we can activate that power whenever we get ready, because that power is not going to change. And that's how come I'm not depressed by slavery, because I know that is what gives us the power. And by that, I'm talking about the seat at the table. And power concedes nothing without a fight. White people are not just going to give us anything because they feel sorry for us. Because if they had felt sorry for us, they would have felt sorry for our ancestors and they wouldn't have had to go through what they went through. But we don't stand in our own strength. And that is the challenge for us going forward. We have to learn how to stand in our own strength. And we have to recognize the game that these Indians are playing. And I'm really, really focusing on these Indians because they are the most gullible. Some of the Africans jump up trying to be Republicans. One of them claimed he was going to end Black History Month. They'll just say anything that they think white people want them to say. But to be honest, I don't think white people paying attention to Africans. I think they look upon Africans the same way that Black Americans look upon Africans. As if, are you serious? You left the richest continent in the world to come to the United States and brag about getting a job and a bunch of degrees that may or may not serve you. But we have to come into the knowledge that we have a seat at the table in America because we've been here from the beginning. And that seat was bought and paid for with the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors. And these immigrants know that, even though they may pretend they don't know it, or they might try to undermine our seat at the table. They know we have a seat at the table, and they don't. Especially these Indians who seem to be on a tear to replace white supremacy. This clown here, Vivek, whatever his name is, when he's speaking about America, he was talking about the Civil War. He said we. He was inserting himself into the Civil War, talking about we, as if he or somebody in his family was fighting on the front lines of the Civil War. He's counting on nobody calling him out and telling him there is no we. You are not a part of the original people that founded this country, whether for good or for bad. So you're no we. But see, they try to implant themselves into white supremacy. And that way they're trying to have power through that. But they don't understand white people when they do that. But we do not understand the power that we have because we constantly give it away. But slavery, and it's really slavery, it's not Jim Crow, it's not redlining, it's slavery is what gives us our seat at the table. But if we play victim, people are going to fight against that. We have not learned how to use slavery to our advantage because people who are trying to speak for us speak of it from the standpoint of us being victims. And because we still suffer, many of us still suffer from the trauma that our ancestors went through. And you can pass that trauma down. I don't care what these folks say. You can pass that trauma down. All of us probably carry it to some extent. But most of us understand that at the end of the day, you got to get on with it. And that's what we do. But slavery is what gives us our seat at the table. We have to learn, and we have not learned how to take it and make it work for us Because as long as we have people pointing out everything that white people do wrong and everything that's wrong in Black America, we're not going to get anywhere. People are just going to say, oh, you just don't want to work. You're just lazy. And we know that we have worked harder than anybody in this country. I believe that when most of us, descendants of slavery, think about slavery, we think about the tragedy of it all. Because it definitely was a tragedy. But I hope that going forward, we can begin to look at slavery as this monumental event in history, in our history. It was not the beginning of our history, but it was the beginning of who we are. A strong people, a resilient people, a people who know how to survive. And I believe that should buffer us in a way that makes us realize and appreciate the seat that we have at the table, because we can always fall back on slavery, but not as a victim, but as a survivor, because we survived it. They survived it, and we're here because they survived it. But that is our strength, that is our fortress, that is our voice, and that's our seat at the table. And I don't think we should give that up to anybody for any reason. Okay, let me know what you think about the video. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.